Hey everyone, this is a technical strategy discussion regarding our continuous fuzz testing initiative. Cool. So looking at the agenda doc, I've broken this into kind of 3 or 4 main goals of this meeting that I foresee. Feel free to add. But let's review the designs. Let's get on the same page about what this is, what the intentions are here. And then in terms of thinking about the feature breakdown, we have 2 main components. So thinking about what that means for back-end work, for front-end work. And then if we're able to come up with some initial off-the-cuff sizing, so t-shirt estimates, that'd be fantastic as well. And I just finished other topics. I'd really like to talk about timing expectations. Sam can help lead that discussion, but just when are we hoping to get development moving on for this would be that last conversation. But we can inform that through the other discussions, especially sizing. So let's see, I don't know if Camelia was able to join. Not actually sure she's invited. Let's keep this more technical. No, I just recognize this as well. We've just had so many of this week. That's okay. I think we have a good comprehension. We talked about this last week when she presented it. I think that was last week, could have been 2 weeks ago. So let's dive in, assuming we have all the information from her. So I don't mind walking through. I'm not sure that I'm the first person. What I do bring to the table is I have experience with the work we did on DAST, which is a very similar initiative. We did DAST on-demand scans. We're kind of
and as we get into this, there may be 1 or 2 of these that we flip over to the DAST team. We can talk about those designs because DAST is further along in some of the web-based work than we are on the fuzzing side, and then we've got a slightly bigger bench on the DAST side.
That's cool. So I can go ahead and steer for now, but I'll definitely look for opportunities to hand that off. So in terms of the design, just to refresh everybody, we have 2 main features, and let me know if this is not big enough. I'll make it a bit bigger. It's the on-demand.
You're just going through the designs attached to the issue, right?
I am, yeah, and this is from the design issue.
Cool.
I don't. Yeah, so we have 2 main features. One is the ability to kick off a new continuous fuzz test, where you would select a number of criteria. Most importantly, how long should this thing run, and then what's our stop condition? So it will cause the pipeline to stop running. And then the next screen where you're navigated to is an active view of those scans in progress, and the ability to stop or pause, cancel, and then also view results, which navigates us over to our dashboard page, the security dashboard, which is not in scope. We shouldn't have any changes for this project is the intention. So it's just those two sections, new scans page, I believe. That sound right to everyone?
Yeah, that sounds good. So if we go to the front end for the new scan page, I don't know that this is really that much different than from a back-end perspective than the new pipeline page. So are you able to pull up just a GitLab go to the GitLab repo and pull up a new pipeline page?
Yeah.
What Evgeny and I spoke about yesterday was this is basically a new skin on top of the new pipeline. So if you go to CI/CD and then pipelines, I think, and then you click new pipeline, I think there should be a button for that. Run pipeline, yeah. So what you'll see here is you should be able to select the branch. And this is actually a design tweak that we realized yesterday. This is run for, and it has a branch name. We may want to do the same thing in our design. If you flip back to our design, we call it a branch. We may actually want to say run for so that we're using the same terminology. And then if you're looking at these values on the left, the fuzzing duration, continuous until stop, 1 day, stop condition, these are nothing more than environment variables, which if you go over to the run pipeline page, you can plug in environment variables right there. So I think what we're looking at is the design is really a skinned version of this page with hard-coded values. So instead of letting the user plug in an environment variable here, we would hard-code that value behind the scenes here. So if we take that in mind, I think this screen may be 100% front-end work, and this could potentially just hit the back-end endpoint that the same run pipeline page is using. So it's no different than that run pipeline, in which case it would be just a front end task. There may be some things that as you get into it are not, but I would propose that we just look at this as a front end task. Maybe we refine this on a front end side and see if we can just do this on a front end with no back end development.
Yeah, and I guess the only thing that the input that will be needed from the backend team is to define like which option on the front end maps to which variable. So I'll just put a list of, okay, continuous fuzzing until meeting the stop condition is count fuzz underscore something variable, and you'll just be able to add it to the post request to the endpoint, and the same for the other options.
And then, so yeah, knowing the name and the environment variables on the front end, and then on the back end, there's one other thing that we would need to do, which is when you instantiate the job, or the build as it's technically called in the software, when you instantiate that, the source is like API, merge request or something to that effect. We'll have to introduce a new source. And so the source will be, continuous fuzz job or something like to that effect. And that source will be in the database so that when we go to show the jobs on the next page, we'll know how to query the job and how it was instantiated.
Right, so there'd be another environment variable that tags the source, I think, and there's I added it lower in our agenda, but there's some references to the on-demand Dast or Dast on-demand where we dug in a little bit, and they've extended the pipeline data set to support that better.
That's exactly it. Yeah, that's on the on-demand. The difference I would say with what we're looking at on this page here and on-demand is in on-demand scans, we actually persisted that data to a database in our own database tables, and we built up kind of an API on the back end to support that data. We don't need to do that here because we can do all of that through environment variables, which makes this a lot easier than some of the work that we did on demand Dast.
So, okay, so for front end, we'll investigate how accessible these queries are, the ability to get a list of branches, as well as being able to instantiate a pipeline.
Yep.
Through an API.
So I think maybe what we're trying to do out of this meeting is this screen right here would be a new issue. It'd be a front end issue to implement this. And then we can just put in a couple of the notes from the backend side. But other than some notes from the backend side, there shouldn't be any needs from the backend team.
I mean, that would be fantastic if this was all readily available for us to consume. So we'll investigate. Can we talk about the values, maybe the underlying? And it's possible that the designs already cover this, but it looks like you can switch between the time frame amount. Behind the scenes, are we just still talking about a common amount of time, like minutes or seconds or something like that, and we just need to translate? Or does the parameters we talked about for fuzzing actually support multiple time frame types?
Yeah, I think you will need to translate it to something just in seconds. I think I need to check the docs in our backend tool, but yeah, it is probably in seconds, I guess.
Okay, so then these are experiences. We fill out this form, we hit run scan, we kick off a pipeline. The pipeline will come back with a pipeline ID. And then that's when we navigate over to, oops, I think I lost it. To this guy, the scans page.
Yep. And so the question I have here is, this is really just who builds this out. Because we have the same screen on Dast. We have not built it out on Dast. We may be able to get to this sooner on Dast. One of the things that we are waiting for, I believe, is from the Verify team to be able to query based on job type. But this may be a screen that we can build out on the Dast side and just handle it that way. But again, this screen is nothing more than if you were to go to the pipeline page, Neil, I think your fourth tab there. And then just click on pipelines. So it's really not, it should be nothing more than this screen. And what we're doing is we want to filter this page on that pipeline source value that we just talked about. So when the pipeline is instantiated through on-demand Dast or continuous fuzzing, we would just pull up just the pipelines here that match that criteria. So it's essentially a filtered view. So I believe there is some backend work that is needed for that to make sure that we can query the pipeline just based on that field. But from a front end perspective, it should, I would imagine the data set should look the exact same as if you were querying this page. It's just going to be a slightly smaller list.
Yeah, so what we learned from the on-demand scans analysis, I think I'll try to bring that over now. But for Dast, so the intention to build this page, the view scans page, but you can see it's the collapsed view, the simplified view specific to on-demand. And so I've linked off this issue in the bottom of our agenda doc today, but there's a discussion where we included the pipelines team. Z Payton is responding. And what we learned, there were two initiatives. One was that the pipelines page itself is being extended to support a scan type. I don't know the exact parameter, but imagine this. So that you can actually enter this page and have it filtered down. So it actually, pre-populate a new filter. And I don't think that's available yet. And this was also a couple months ago, so I'm not sure what the progressions look like. But this was our intention. If we can just navigate to this page to a filtered view, that'd be awesome. And then another part of this discussion was that they were bumping up the data availability of this page. So essentially building GraphQL endpoints that will allow us to retrieve pipeline information, which is what Seth was talking about. If we have that available, then this thing becomes a lot easier on the back end because another team's doing a lot of the work for us.
Yeah, and I think that was one of the ideas on Dast was we were deferring this issue for as long as we could, with hopes that Verify was going to be able to get some of those new filters in there.
So if we talk about a similar situation or opportunity for Fuzz, what about just navigating into pipelines as an MVC, as like an iteration one or a milestone one, however you want to frame that, versus trying to accomplish this page at the same time?
Well, because remember this screen, this is not intended to show individual pipelines, though. This is intended to show continuous fuzz testing jobs against a given branch that might have many pipelines associated with it. So like the second and third rows there, each of those might have had 100 pipelines ran against it, but we would only show a single row and then the latest pipeline against it. We wouldn't show all 100 pipelines per continuous fuzzing run.
Yeah, I guess that was my point, is if we can leverage that filtering to filter this by branch and possibly job type.
So, well, I think one of the things that's important is for the MVC, what we're relying on the user to do is set up the synchronous and asynchronous jobs in their regular YAML file. So we're not running just the job. We're running their entire pipeline. Now, and that's kind of what that note says on that first design, which is like you need to set up your pipeline in a way that it's not going to run all the other jobs if you don't want them run. So we're going to run all the jobs in their pipeline. We're not just running the continuous fuzzing job. The other thing is the continuous fuzzing is going to run one long job for whatever duration they're saying. So if you go back to that design screen, I think your second tab, Neil, it's going to run one job for, do you have the previous screen? It'll run one job for an hour or 2 hours or 10 hours or 20 hours or whatever until that stop condition matches. So if you have a continuous fuzzing job and your stop condition is, I'm actually not sure how no stop condition would work, to be honest. Now that I'm thinking through this a little bit more, because if it starts generating a bunch of crashes and it doesn't stop, it's never going to get those onto the dashboard. So the stop conditions we may need to limit to the first two, but it's just going to keep running. It's going to collect all those crashes, and then eventually, when it hits, let's say 1,000 minutes, it will push all those up to the dashboard. So it's not going to spawn off like lots and lots of jobs. Evgeny, is that accurate? I think you're on mute.
As he looks for the mute button.
Yeah, I was looking for the mute. Too many screens. Yeah, so so I think like regarding maybe Sam's questions first. So like yeah, so for the MVC, we are running the pipeline, and maybe Sam and Neil's question, and because we are running the whole pipeline, and if we will have like the filtering in the pipeline, I guess the dashboard can work, but for like after post MVC, where we want to be able to run on the job, only the job, I think the question, if we need like the new screen of the on demand, is it depends. So first, it depends just if we want another screen. So maybe if we want another screen, then we can just do kind of a duplicate screen. But also it depends on the implementation. So for example, if there will be an implementation of when we say, okay, we want to run only one job, but essentially the underlying will be running kind of a pipeline with only one job and without the user kind of configuring any environment variables to exclude all the other jobs. So it still will be a pipeline. So maybe we will be able to use also the same screen. But again, maybe we want another screen for product purposes, and I guess it's a question for Sam. And Seth, you also had the question regarding the stop condition. Can you repeat it? Because I think while I was looking for the mute button, I misheard the last part. Yeah.
The issue is that we only get results back onto the dashboard when the job exits, right? So if we don't have a stop condition and it finds a crash and it finds another crash and finds another crash, it kind of puts those in the queue. But if there's no stop condition and it just runs on indefinitely, there's no way to get those results back into the dashboard.
Yeah, so this is, yeah.
So we have to have a timeout that says after 1,000 minutes, take what crashes you have and flush this, out of the buffer into the dashboard, or when a crash occurs. But we can't have no stop condition. The only way we could introduce no stop condition is if we have a way of sending those results as we get them to the dashboard. And right now there's no infrastructure for that.
Yeah, so this is definitely, so this is something we also talked about. We have to either implement or maybe, I know there is, like, this feature was discussed also in other teams. So I don't know what's the status on this one, if it's scheduled yet or not, or if we need to implement it in our team to have this ability.
Question about that. Isn't that what the pipeline only version of the continuous fuzzing MVC is doing? Isn't it starting a pipeline, running it for 10 minutes, then starting a new one? Because that was the intention with the stop condition duration. That should be start to finish from a user perspective, not necessarily each individual pipeline. And then that's how we would achieve the no stop condition. It would just be an infinite sequence of 10-minute pipeline strung together.
So like the implement, you mean that we will have like multiple pipelines that kind of trigger themselves?
Right, because in the MVC you put together, Evgeny, isn't that what it's doing, where it'll have one job running, and if it either times out or finds a crash, it stops and then starts a new pipeline?
Oh, so
My understanding was that's what was going to drive the behavior of this screen, like not us having to build something for it, just using that.
so currently it just stops, and I think James did a kind of a POC where you can kind of trigger another pipeline again, but we said that it looks confusing on the front end, so so we said that we wanted to kind of from in the future implement it. I don't know if it's for the MVC or post MVC to implement something that a pipeline can upload, like you have one long running pipeline, but you have an ability to upload results before the pipeline is finished, like without to create like hundreds of pipeline, because then you kind of spam the dashboard.
So Sam, the way it works now is with the continuous fuzzing, it will run a pipeline for an hour. And at the end of an hour, it will flush all the results out to the dashboard. What makes it continuous is that if you have another commit, what it will do is it will start another job. The current pipeline will shut down gracefully, push the updates up there, and then another job will start. But that's from a user instantiated action. So the user, as long as they're committing, every hour or whatever, the jobs will keep going indefinitely. But the system today is not running an hour, starting its own pipeline, and then starting its own pipeline, which I think is what your understanding of how it works is.
Yeah, because I thought what we had talked about on the milestone C part, that new job being kicked off was done as a result of the timer expiring in the pipeline, not a user create commit. Are you saying that's incorrect?
Yeah, that's not correct. Like it's currently triggered either a user triggering another like long running job on the same branch, or commit, or a commit on the main branch, and then the old pipeline is stopped and the new one is stopped flushing the results, and the new one is downloading downloading the latest results and running.
Okay, so the continuous fuzzing that we have right now, all it is just a really long running job then. It's not actually going to be streaming results by kicking off multiple pipelines in the middle then.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and what it handles is jobs. Like if another job starts, it will know how to shut down the previous job, grab the results, and then put that as input into the next job. So it can chain those, but it's expecting the user to initiate a new job.
Got it. Okay, well, I think that's a behavior we need to update then, because the intention of that was that it's going to be running continuously without needing a user to interact with it with a commit, but rather be like, if it is a 60-minute job timeout, it kicks off a new job at the end of that 60 minutes. And then that would be the mechanism that this screen would be layering an abstraction over top of. Because if we can't offer a no stop condition, that's not continuous fuzzing. That's just a really long running fuzzer.
Yeah, so I think there's two approaches to this. One is if we try to chain jobs together, which is the work that James is doing, which creates what kind of initiated this is it creates a just mess of pipelines and data that's coming through. Or what we do is we focus on a long running job that is able to stream and send data back to the dashboard. So I think if we do, a self-instantiating pipeline, that's a little bit easier, I guess, but it creates a huge mess of data for the user that's hard to sort through. If we do the streaming, I think that's a much nicer experience for the user, but there's more engineering work in order to figure out how to stream those results. So I don't know whether we want to focus on that before we start working on this this experience here, or whether we want to focus on this experience and then do the first 2 radio buttons under stop condition and then work on the streaming results later.
So I think the streaming results piece is the part that you all told me would take probably 6-ish months, right? So I'd prefer we do that later rather than do that before this work. I'd prefer we use the boring solution, something like what James is doing with job stringing together. Thoughts?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the James POC, I think, is working. But I mean, I need to also try this on my end again to see if we don't hit any major hiccups when integrating. And I mean, if it's working, we can have this kind of self-triggering pipeline every hour or so, and then we need to think about like how, for example, on the on-demand dashboard, or like on the pipeline dashboard, we need to think how we show to the user like which jobs are running, or like which fuzzing jobs are running. Kind of maybe tag the pipeline in some way or something like that.
The other thing I was just thinking about is, instead of a pipeline that tags itself, we could potentially just use a schedule, so that you have a pipeline that runs for an hour and you have a pipeline that starts every hour. Or you could actually do something using what we have today. You could have a pipeline that starts every hour, and our pipeline runs 61 minutes. So if our pipeline runs 61 minutes and you have one that starts on the hour, the one that starts on the hour is going to shut down the one that's 61 minutes, grab the results, and then keep moving that way. And that would be nothing more than using our scheduled job. Like if you were right now today, put in a scheduled job, it would work using everything that we have in place, and then you'd have a continuous fuzzing.
Yeah, and I think from a user perspective, that achieves the goal. And I do appreciate that it'll create a lot of pipelines. We're just going to clutter the pipeline screen, but that's what these designs are intending to abstract away, so that, you know, the user is not looking at that pipeline screen with hundreds of results, but just looking at, here's the one that's running for that project, for that branch. Here's another project, another branch.
So Neil, can you go to that results screen?
Working on it.
So I'm not sure. So Sam, what are you thinking that this would query? Because let's say we'd have a pipeline starting every hour, right? So you have, 24 pipelines for yesterday. What are you thinking that this screen would show? Because naturally, if you just query the database, you're going to get 24 pipelines for the last day. Now we could filter based on running, or we could filter based on if they're returning results. But we'd want to build in some kind of filter unless, otherwise continuous fuzzing is just going to show them every hour or whatever interval we decide.
Right. So I'm not sure what it's going to query. My point being, I don't think that we can just use the pipeline view directly here, because what each of these line items is intended to show is that you have a given project with a given branch that has continuous fuzzing running against it. In some cases, the backend implementation of that might be using scheduled pipelines, streaming pipelines, change pipelines, whatever, however we decide to implement it. But we want the user to be thinking about, I have a branch that I'm running continuous fuzzing against, without necessarily having to make them think about how we're running it. I have a couple ideas, but that's really the goal of this.
So if you have continuous fuzzing running, let's say every hour, I'm assuming that you wanted to run like why that frequency? So like, for example, if we're running that often, do we care about what happens in between those runs, or do we care what the latest run shows, or do we care what surfaced that's new as a result of those runs in between? Like, where we can maybe aggregate like the differences, like if we're running very frequently, what's the real intent of running it so frequently? And do we care
Yeah.
about all the pipelines that have run, or just?
So the reason you have to run it frequently is because we can only get results when the job is done. And so you could run it every 5 hours, but then you're waiting 5 hours before you can get the results. So an hour is an arbitrary time frame, but it's just so that after an hour we get the results and then we start up the job again. So it's kind of an ugly workaround because we can't get the results out to the dashboard. So
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
what
The 60 minutes is more of an internal how we implement it, not something a user cares about.
Yeah, so I think what we want on this screen is essentially you want I think you only have one pipeline per branch that's going to be running, because if another pipeline runs and it starts if you try to run multiple pipelines on a branch, when they hit the continuous fuzzing, it's going to shut down the other continuous fuzzing job. So you're going to have one fuzzing job running per pipeline. So you'd want to just filter based on branch and then search for any of the last fuzzing job on that branch and then just show the latest fuzzing job on that particular branch. Now, where the view results page would go, I would think that would be the dashboard page or the pipeline page.
Security dashboard, yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm not sure if the pipeline widget shows all of the results from previous runs. Or I guess the latest job would be aggregating those, wouldn't it, Evgeny?
Yeah, I think like the latest job. Let me think it for a second. Yeah, I think the latest job should aggregate all the previous results. Yeah.
So the view results could go to the pipeline widget page for that particular branch, and it should show everything that's been found in previous jobs that are part of that continuous fuzzing.
Yeah, I think so.
So the designs we have it going to the security dashboard, are you proposing that we change that to a different screen then?
No, there should be, my understanding is Threat Insights is working on a page for the merge request widget.
Mhm.
So that's where that view results page would go. That because these are on a master branch, or sorry, these are on potentially, if it's a master branch, we can go to the dashboard. If it's on a branch, then we would go to the merge request widget page.
Oh, I see, because the dashboard's only against the main branch in the project.
Exactly, yeah.
Got it.
I'm just trying to think of whether we want to look at using the streaming results. I know that's a big effort, but my concern is trying to tie all these pipelines together may end up, I think we're going to run into a number of issues that we're not expecting.
It can be
Yeah,
a bit
my
flaky.
hesitation on the streaming one is just if we thought that was 6 months from looking at it, I'm curious what other sorts of dragons are going to be lurking there. You know, especially if we have to go into other teams' areas, you know, that's going to drag on.
Yeah. I'm wondering if it may be worth a week or two to try to flesh that out just to see what we're looking at. Because I think there's definitely some issues that we're going to run into on pipelines.
since we're almost 40 minutes in, do we want to mark this down as something we need to resolve and table it for now so we can get through the rest of them?
Yep.
Cool.
So it sounds like, yeah, the estimations, we'll work on them for front end. Yeah, this page, I mean, I'll lean on Fernando to help me represent front end, but building that form, wherever that went. Fernando, what are you thinking in terms of like small, medium, large, medium maybe being a milestone worth of work, large being multiple?
I mean, it's just a form. I mean, from the front end, like providing the field, like generating the scan branch. I think we already have existing endpoints to get all the branches available and like autocomplete and stuff for a given project. So I'm not too worried about that. The other fields, if they're pretty static in terms of what the options are, it's just more about generating the request that goes over to the endpoint, like the post request. So I don't think that'd be too hard on the front end. There's nothing sticks out to me other it's just a form with some radio buttons, unless I'm missing something. It seems like more of the implementation be backend heavy for what they do with that form data, you know?
Which ideally is handled by those environment variables already. That's all.
Yeah, I'm more worried about, I'm more worried about the other view where we're showing the pipeline stuff, because I don't know, implementing it shouldn't be too hard, assuming that the endpoints, everything we need from the endpoints are in place. But if we need to start, if we're trying to leverage existing endpoints or kind of like cobble together, like hitting 3 or 4 different endpoints to try to aggregate get this data to the client side, it could get pretty sloppy. So really, there's a lot of unknowns here in terms of.
I don't think we have enough information to effectively estimate this just yet. That's why I was hoping to focus on this, because this is something we could possibly get started on in 13.7.
Yeah, so if we remove that no stop condition, everything above that you could implement today, and it works. It would fire off a pipeline, and you get it's just another way of instantiating a pipeline, basically. And that means we don't have to solve the big issue we were just talking about immediately for the front end team to move forward. We do need to solve it for the second screen.
So I'd actually like us to keep the no stop condition in. If we can't figure out how to actually make these jobs chains, you can do this. I don't think we're ready to ship this and make the big announcement to users. If maybe we put something in there like just a temporary placeholder, but I think we need to have the no stop for V1 of this.
So, I mean, if that's the case, it's just going to hold up this work for a while, because that's, I guess what I'm trying to do is figure out if there's a way that we can unblock the front end so they can move forward, because there's other stuff that the back end team has to work on, and then it's just a matter of priority. So, and this was later in the agenda, like if we work on corpus management, we might be able to do some of that work on the back end, and front end can keep moving forward on this. So I'm wondering if there's a way that we can get front end working. They can work independently on this. Maybe we don't release it, but maybe they just get this up and running. And then I don't want to make too many dependencies in this.
Yeah, my concern about getting this done ahead of time, if it's going to be like 2 milestones out or whatever, right? And more than a milestone to get it, like this code could get stale pretty quickly. And if things change, then we kind of do that work for something that is not, you know what I mean? Like it's okay to, I think it's okay to start this first if we know that the backend is coming, like even, you know, in the following milestone. But if it's a lot of up in the air, this to get the front end code, we get very stale very quickly. Especially since we have a lot of other front end fuzzing work we can work on that is probably more deliverable in the near future than this if it's going to be blocked on backend.
Yeah, so I mean, in terms of stuff that's I think more deliverable that has less CI questions is definitely on the corpus management, and that was I think later in the agenda is where does that fit compared to this continuous fuzzing screen? So Sam, I don't know if corpus management's more critical than the continuous fuzzing. Or we
We're not
want to focus on.
reviewing designs for that one today, right? For corpus
Uh,
management.
Sorry, I didn't catch the whole thing.
We're not reviewing designs for corpus management today. The question
No.
was just a priority question.
It is,
It was a
yes.
priority question because the question is, do we cut off some work here to unblock front end so they can keep moving forward, or we're going to leave front end blocked by the back end because we want to focus on the other stuff?
Got it. Well, so from my perspective, because kind of the surprise in this call is I thought we already had continuous fuzzing running like we've been talking about. So for this item, we need to figure out what the scope and our different options are to figure out whether we want to, what we want to do in the short term or take a longer term approach to it. And then I think that'll also help answer the, do we do corpus or this first from both front and back end sides? If we're pretty confident in front and back end for the corpus management, if this is going to take us time to figure out what we're going to do on this screen, I'd say we do corpus management first while we figure out the unknowns around this item. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So your thought is if corpus management is ready to there's less uncertainty and we can go on that, do corpus first, and then try to.
Yeah, I
figure
mean,
out
because it'd be silly to. Yeah, because to Fernando's point, it'd be silly to build a bunch of screens that we're just going to have to redo depending on what happens, you know, between now and then. But I think we've gone through corpus management a number of times where we don't have any of these unknown things we need to hammer out. At least I don't think we do. Let me know if we do.
Yeah, I mean, I think corpus management, there's things that we have to figure out technically, but they're not as complicated as continuous, because I think what I would say about corpus management is more contained within our group. And so we can solve those. The challenge here is the continuous either relies on some verify runner functionality, that type of thing, or working with threat insights and the broader secure group to figure out the streaming issue. So there's just more uncertainty and I think more variables because we have to reach outside our group and impact more parts of GitLab. The one thing I would say is if we work on corpus management, we'll be working on that. This is not going to move forward while we're working on corpus management because you're basically looking at our engineers on this call. So they're going to be working on one or the other. It's not like we can have some background work going on. So I don't want to imply that, hey, we'll work on corpus management, and then when we're done with that, we'll know exactly what the answer is for here. We're still going to finish corpus management, and then we'll have to start figuring out what the answer is for this.
So you're saying we can't be doing research into some of the things that James has put together or some of these other approaches then in parallel?
I mean, there's not really anyone else to do the work, right? So if Kenny wants to spend time working with James on that research, then he won't be working on corpus management. So that's why I think the prioritization is so critical here.
Okay.
So, and I also want to speak for front end real quick, because I know there was a design session. I was out of office that week, so I did not attend it. I'm not sure if there's a recording immediately available. I don't think we're up to speed and we fully understand what corpus management is. I was going through the screens real quick. It's way more simplified for sure. It doesn't have that weird interaction and async behavior. But I think we also need to do a discovery or technical strategy similar to this meeting, where we're walking through and uncovering what the scope for front end and back end looks like.
We also have API fuzzing stuff that we have scheduled soon for the next milestone too. So I don't know how that factors in priorities and the API fuzzing MR widget stuff. So yeah, I wanted to call that out.
Yeah, definitely. We would anticipate that going into 13.7, at maybe midway through. It's predominantly the merge request and the findings modal. As we wrap up the dashboard and details pages this week, we'll jump over to those, but those are going to go into 13.7.
Okay, so I guess maybe the question is, Sam, what I'm hearing from you is we don't want to move forward with this without like a real continuous fuzzing. We don't want to move forward with just those top two radio buttons. We need to have that continuous fuzzing that's going to spawn multiple pipelines or stream results, but we have to solve that problem before we want to move forward with even the top, whatever, 7/8 of this page.
Correct. Yeah, because
Okay.
I think if we put this out there just as it'll start a really long pipeline, that's not the expectation we want to set of what continuous fuzzing is. If you have to make
Okay.
a pipeline, then wait a week to get results, like that's not as impactful as, you know, it runs all the time and then it's going to tell you things as it goes.
Yeah, I mean, but the other thing is that I think we talked about is that a lot of time, like very often when you run fuzzing for a lot of time, then yes, for example, in the Google cluster fuzz, so they also run it, I think, till the first crash. So you can say kind of like when a crash occurs, essentially it's kind of like infinite until, you know, so it can run for a day or 2 days, and you will know that if it's running, even though you don't see results, it's because there is no crash. So you will be able to see the logs, right? But you will know there is no crash. So I think it's maybe it's yeah, it's obviously it's not perfect. It's possible to set up like fuzzing engines, you know, tell them run even if you find crashes, but a lot of time people really set it up like till the first crash, because what happens, and it depends on fuzzing engine and really depends on the use case, but what happens is if you configure the fuzzing engine to, okay, please run and don't stop even if you found crashes, that it just keeps finding the same crash because it's kind of stuck in the, like there is a crash in one path of the program, and then it's stuck. So so it's a popular use case, but I'm not saying that it's that people are not setting up, you know, fuzzers with, you know, with the second option. But the first option is also popular, and I think there are some vendors that using this, the first option.
So yeah, so Evgeny, what you're saying is the second option when a crash occurs is you see customers viewing that as continuous fuzzing because you're continuously fuzzing until something happens and then you're stopping.
Yeah, because it's, I think, let me see if I can try and find this link. I think I already posted it in some of our docs. If you see this weird sound, it's the rain here. So.
And what you're talking about, that third option, the no stop condition, I think there's a number of white papers about this, about, I forget what it's called, but it's like roadblocks basically, where you have a crash and your fuzzer can never get past that crash until you have to either fix that crash or create some kind of workaround for the fuzzer. And so actually there is a significant risk with the third option, which is what you're talking about, Evgeny, which is if you get a crash, we log that crash, and then it finds another finds another piece of data and finds that crash again. It finds another crash, finds another crash. So, and it could just be a lot of data processing.
So, I mean, we will still show only one crash, as we know to like deduplicate it, but like the CPU essentially will just kind of waste the time on just finding this crash again and again, and it will kind of essentially your fuzzing will be less efficient, right? Because it will be stuck in this place, and yeah, some of the time maybe it will be able to explore other passes and to find new crashes, but still a lot of time will go on just finding the same crash. So I'm trying to find this best practice.
Sure.
Google
yeah, I mean,
cluster
since
fuzz.
we only have a couple minutes left, so I mean, I hear you. I guess the place that I'm coming from now, we're getting a question of, we can only do one of these two. Which should we do first? The continuous one has some, I at least have some misunderstandings. There's some unknowns versus the other one, which is clear. We should prioritize that one first while we get aligned on the second one. Maybe we do end up coming down to this point where, you know, the implementation we have today, you know, is fine. And maybe we talk about the, you know, the best practice and we decide to change our mind. But at least for right now, that's where I'm coming from on a prioritization perspective.
So Sam, so the idea right now is we want to hold off on this until we can figure out that no stop condition issue.
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, Seth, I think you and we can explore, maybe if there's someone from the other teams we can look to for some help. I mean, if James is one of the ones that built that original POC, maybe we could get some of his cycles to help with this. So that way, you know, we can figure out some of the unknowns and build a plan without having to get the whole engineering team on one issue first.
Yep.
And I guess like regarding your your previous question, Sam, we can try and talk exactly to other teams regarding the continuous fuzzing and do kind of a low-hanging fruit research on how to stream results and see if really how complex it is. If it's really complex as we think it is, but then we need to prioritize. There are, apart from the corpus management, there are also some kind of backend issues in the upcoming milestone, like Python and other stuff. So we kind of need to also prioritize it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm definitely expecting if there's other things we need to solve or find time for, like that will affect the roadmap. We'll shift things around because, you know, if we want to do other things have to go, right? So definitely point taken. We'll move things around as needed.
Okay, so it sounds like we have a couple of things that we need to research on this. We can open up some issues to look at the streaming results. Maybe we can have a meeting with some of the other team members just to get a better idea instead of just 6 months, like really what does it look like and frame that. We can talk to Sam, you and I can talk about this, but maybe figure out a way if James can help us again solving this issue or get us a little bit closer. So it sounds like a little bit of homework before we can move this issue forward. We don't want to move it forward on the front end because we don't have a clear timeline on the back end piece. Is that accurate?
Mm-hmm. That's my understanding.
And then I think our next step is potentially, Neil, maybe we do another one of these meetings with the corpus, and hopefully that one gets us to an implementation plan, and that'll be a little bit more shovel ready.
Sounds good.
Does this time work for everyone?
Yeah.
It's noon for me, and yeah.
Fine.
It's great for you, Seth, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's the beginning of my day, so I could do this time or later, but I certainly know, I think Evgeny, you're in the latest time zone right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Depending how early I wake up that day,
Yep.
but it's fine.
What time is it for you now? Just curious.
10 p.m.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I'm flexible. So whatever works for the team.
And I could probably do an hour earlier if that's helpful.
Yeah, for me it will be helpful. I don't know for others.
That helps me, but then
I
it
would
puts
say
Fernando right in his lunch break. I think regardless. And this will be short term, right, as we're cutting through some of these big features.
Yeah, I think this was
massively
helpful, and I think we got a lot better understanding across the team of where we are and what we have.
Agreed. Yeah, I would say on the timing question, Seth and Evgeny, since you two are at the most extreme ends, if you two find a time, I can move my stuff around to accommodate.
Neil, would you mind putting something on the calendar sooner, as soon as is reasonable for the corpus management?
Yeah, don't mind at all. I'm just wondering like what that looks like. Are we trying to do it this week? Because we have the design session with Camellia tomorrow. We could try to do like before that.
I think we could
it's gonna
probably
be
do it
next week.
I think we
But
could do it
that's
next week.
Friday for you, but maybe that's okay.
Yeah, next week would, I think, be fine. If we got the design session.
And I think in general, I don't know if this is like in the handbook or not, but I've noticed a lot of teams try to avoid having Fridays packed with meetings, but I'm okay with next week as well, or tomorrow, up to you. But
Fridays is no meeting Fridays across the company.
yeah,
That's why you don't have meetings there.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at the calendar really quick.
The world need to move to one time zone.
Since we're all here real quick, I wanted to call out, I don't want to go too over, but so the coverage fuzzing right now, it's in production. It's seen, and we have a demo project that's working on our end, but I think Sam called out a production, like an actual project that is having the coverage fuzzing widget like error out. So I don't know if that's a blocker for self-managed. The docs are ready to go. So this, I don't know if it's a follow-up bug, if it's a corner edge case, we still need to look into it. I created a bug issue right now to track that work. So what's unsure is that we have projects, we know it works in most cases, but there's an edge case here that there's an unknown of why that's erroring out. So I don't know if we should hold off on the self-managed merge request to enable, or if we should even disable it in production right now, because it's on GitLab.com. We have the feature flag available. So I just wanted to call that out. Like, do we still feel like it's stable enough, or is this project that Sam linked to us an edge case? We have other production projects that we can refer to and make sure that's working for those customers.
Can it be a permission issue? So maybe for someone else, he will see.
Yeah, we've had that issue in the past. That Mo had worked on an issue where someone had forked a project in the pipeline of running a different context. So the security report widgets did break in those cases because the pipeline exists, but it was 404ing because we don't. Oh, that's probably what it is. It's like we're trying to get data for a pipeline that on a public project, but that pipeline for some reason may be private.
Yeah, so
all the security stuff, you need to be a developer or a maintainer, right? If we're just an anonymous user, we wouldn't be able to see security dashboard stuff either.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm just that project you linked to. I see the security reports. I shouldn't be seeing them in general. Then it would seem like, but I'm not a developer of that project, so I don't know if there's a bug somewhere else. But
yeah, you could also try logging out and going to a logged out user and see if you have a issue. What I would say is we still have like a week and a half in this milestone. So if we can try to figure out what the issue is, it may be something that we just update our documentation. But we have a week and a half to try to get a merge request in there to fix it.
okay.
And then, so we still have time to figure out whether we change default for self-managed.
Okay, that's fine. So for GitLab.com, it's okay to leave enabled for now, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it's a bug, but it's not taking anything down.
Okay.
If it was causing problems and they can't load their merge request page or something else, then I would say, yeah, shut that off. But
right.
It's kind of self-contained, so I don't think that's an issue.
Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Sounds good.
Cool.
So Neil, we'll look for a meeting calendar invite.
Yep, it's already in your inbox. So it's next Monday Pacific at 11 a.m. or sorry, 10 a.m. I guess. So it's an hour earlier than we met today.
Okay, sounds great.
But it looks like Thursday, tomorrow still works if we want to try to move that forward, or if anyone else. Everyone has edit privileges, so if you want to move it around, go for it.
Yeah, because tomorrow is the design review, so we won't go into as low level of technical implementation. We can just hammer some of those details out.
What's the context of the design session? Is that the configuration? Is that something else?
I think the design session is just to go through the design, make sure it all makes sense, that I guess at a high level that it makes sense technically, and that it does all the user functionality. So it doesn't necessarily, we don't have to go into how we're going to implement it, but just make sure it all makes sense.
Sorry, specific to what feature? Corpus management configuration? What are we talking about?
API fuzzing configuration.
Configuration specifically.
I think the issue and the designs are linked on the invite as well. So that should have some good information in it as well.
Definitely, and we talked. We had a session yesterday. That was
And
more
Sam, I
technically
don't know if you
focused, and we
saw
talked about
my-
config.
Sam, I don't know if you saw my my comment on that. My concern for the design session tomorrow is we're actually focusing on the exact. We're focusing on the things that we don't need, and the initial issue was actually for the YAML file, which the design session tomorrow doesn't cover.
I wrote you a reply on there.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to do it async. I actually have to jump to another call.
Yep. All right, sounds good.
All
All right, thanks everyone.
Thanks, folks.
Cool.
See
You
ya.
too. See ya.